The Workplace Gender Equality Agency has published the first ever gender pay gap data for Commonwealth public sector employers, which includes the likes of the ABC, Australia Post and the Australian Federal Police. And it shows that for every dollar men earn in the public sector, women earn 94 cents. Mary Wooldridge is the CEO of the agency and she joins us now. Good to see you, Mary. So how does the public sector pay gap compare with what's happening in the private sector?
Well, the results that the Workplace Gender Equality Agency has published today show that the federal public sector performs well in comparison to the private sector. When you look at the gender pay gap, which is the average remuneration of men and women and the difference between the two, it's 6.4% at the federal public sector. The comparator in the private sector is 21.1%, so substantially different. Now, of course, any aggregate hides some detail underneath it, but what that shows is consistently federal public sector agencies are performing well, although there is a range, of course.
Okay, so what are the actions which have been effective in the public sector which would make a difference for private sector employees?
Well, I think there's been a concerted effort over an extended period of time identifying equality and fairness in the workplace as a priority, and there's an expectation of Commonwealth agencies that they have a strategy to address gender equality, that it's led by the CEO or the Secretary of the agency. There's plans in place, there's resources committed, and there's oversight and analysis to see the impact that's being achieved through the work that's happening. And that's certainly what we recommend is what needs to happen. It needs to have the leadership from the top, but throughout the organisation, and a genuine commitment to drive change. And the solutions aren't the same in whether it's public sector or private sector. In any employer, there's different solutions, but you have to do the work and it has to have that commitment to get the outcomes that we're seeking.
So the gap may be smaller in the public sector, Mary, but it's still there. Are you confident that public employers are trying to achieve parity, and when might they do that?
Well, I think the journey and the reductions that we're seeing over time are very positive in relation to that. And I think there's been a clear articulation from the government of a commitment for public sector agencies to have a focus on this, and that's translating through to action at the employer level. I couldn't say, we want to accelerate change. That's part of what publishing gender pay gaps, which is what we're doing for the first time today for the public sector, brings transparency and accountability to speed up that rate of change. And it's very hard to pick an end date, but the sooner the better.
So what more needs to be done then to improve better balance in the workplace in the public sector then? Mary, what's the data saying to you?
Well, one of the key areas where there's a difference that's driving part of the gender pay gap is the difference between base salary and discretionary payments, so things like overtime and bonuses. And it's those discretionary payments that are quite a substantial driver of the gender pay gap. So agencies that have those gaps need to be asking the question and doing the analysis. Why are men accessing those discretionary payments more than women are? What's the limiting factors, and can things be done to address that? Now, partly with overtime, it's additional hours and people might not have the opportunity to put their hand up for them, but it is doing that analysis and working through what could be done differently so that men and women can equally access the opportunity to have higher remuneration through the process. We also do see there's still some differences in the proportion of women in the workforce and how that's reflected at the most senior levels. So we definitely have better results in the Commonwealth public sector than the private sector, but there's still a gap between that proportional representation at the most senior levels that needs to continue to be worked on.